It starts with a broken man, a father who has nothing left but memories of the little girl he lost. When children ask him to dance for her, he takes one trembling step, and the world stops to watch. But what looks like a moment of grief turns into something no one expected. Because the man watching from the shadows, the powerful CEO, carries a secret that could shatter everything, a secret that ties their lives together in ways neither of them imagined. As the truth begins to surface, one father will fight to honor his daughter's memory, while another must face the past he's tried to bury. Why did the CEO collapse that day? What happens when the poorest man in the room holds the power to heal the richest? And when the music stops, who will still be standing? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning dew clung to the grass at Oak Hill Cemetery, catching the early sunlight like tiny diamonds. Eli Brooks knelt before Maya's headstone, his work uniform already damp at the knees. He didn't mind. The bundle of wildflowers in his hands, purple coneflowers and black-eyed Susans, were Maya's favorites, the same kinds that used to grow in their tiny backyard. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," he whispered, arranging the flowers carefully against the stone. His fingers traced the engraved letters of her name, remembering how she used to twirl in the kitchen, her socks sliding on the linoleum floor while music played from their old radio. The memory of her laughter echoed in his mind, bright and clear, like wind chimes in a summer breeze. Maya had loved to dance more than anything. Even when she was tiny, she would grab his hands and make him spin her around and around until they both got dizzy. Eli sat back on his heels, his throat tight. "I miss you, baby girl, every single day." The sound of quiet footsteps on grass made him look up. Claire Whitmore was walking toward him, leading a small group of children from her class. They moved carefully between the headstones, their faces solemn but kind. Eli recognized most of them. He saw them every day in the school hallways where he worked. "Mr. Brooks?" Claire's voice was gentle. She wore a simple blue dress, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. "We hoped we might find you here this morning." Eli stood slowly, brushing grass from his knees. "Miss Whitmore," he nodded, trying to smile for the children's sake. The kids formed a loose semicircle, looking up at him with soft eyes. They had known Maya, too. She'd been their classmate, their friend. Some held small bunches of dandelions they must have picked on their way. Claire stepped forward, her hands clasped together. "Will you dance with us for Maya?" she asked softly. The children, they remember how much she loved it. "We thought, maybe we could all dance together, just a little bit, for her birthday." Eli's chest tightened. The thought of dancing here, now, made his hands tremble. But looking at those earnest young faces, he could almost hear Maya's voice. "Come on, Daddy, dance with me." I'm not very good at it," he managed, his voice rough. "That's okay," one of the little girls said. Maya always said it wasn't about being good, it was about being happy. The children began to hum softly. "Nearer, my God, to Thee," the hymn Maya had loved best. Their young voices rose pure and sweet in the morning air. Eli's feet moved before he could think too much about it. The steps were awkward, unpracticed. But he remembered how Maya used to hold his hands, how she would count for him. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. He turned slowly, the way she had taught him, feeling both foolish and blessed. The children's humming grew stronger, and Claire joined in, her clear voice adding harmony. Eli closed his eyes for a moment, letting the music wash over him. In his mind, Maya was there, beaming up at him with that gap-toothed smile she'd had since losing her front teeth in 2nd grade. From across the cemetery, a sharp sound cut through the hymn, a gasp or a sob. Eli opened his eyes and saw a man in an expensive suit crumpled to his knees near a large oak tree. Other morning visitors hurried to help him up, but the man, who Eli didn't recognize, seemed overcome, his shoulders shaking. Eli kept dancing, though his movements grew slower. The children's voices began to fade, the hymn coming to its natural end. He made one final turn, facing Maya's headstone again, and stopped. "Thank you," he said quietly to Claire and the children. Maya would have. His voice caught, and he had to take a deep breath. She would have loved this. The children came forward, one by one, laying their dandelions next to his wildflowers. Some touched the headstone gently, the way he had. One little boy whispered, "We miss you, Maya." Eli glanced again toward the oak tree. The man in the suit was being helped to his feet by two people. But Eli didn't want to intrude on whatever private grief had brought him to his knees. Everyone who came to Oak Hill carried their own sorrows. "Mr. Brooks?" Claire touched his arm lightly. "Would you like us to stay with you a while?" He shook his head, managing a small smile. "No, thank you. I think I need a few minutes alone with my girl." Claire nodded, understanding in her eyes. She gathered the children with a gentle gesture, and they followed her quietly back along the path between the graves. Eli turned back to Maya's headstone, his heart full of an emotion he couldn't quite name, something between grief and gratitude, between loss and love. The wildflowers nodded in a light breeze, and somewhere nearby, a bird began to sing. He touched the stone one last time, then straightened his shoulders and walked away, leaving the morning sun to warm the flowers and the memories they carried. The kitchen clock ticked steadily in Eli Brooks's small house as evening settled in. His fork scraped against the ceramic plate, the sound echoing in the empty space. A simple meal of microwaved leftovers sat before him. Chicken and rice that had lost its flavor days ago, but he barely noticed anymore. Across the table, Maya's chair remained exactly as she'd left it, slightly pulled out at an angle. He'd never moved it back in. Sometimes, the empty space felt like a physical weight pressing down on his chest, but he couldn't bring himself to change anything about it. The dried flowers she'd picked still sat in a mason jar at the center of the table, brittle and faded now. Eli pushed the food around his plate, taking mechanical bites without tasting them. The events from that morning at the cemetery kept replaying in his mind, the children's voices, the gentle sway of the dance he'd done for Maya. It had felt both right and wrong, joyful and painful all at once. A gentle knock at the screen door interrupted his thoughts. "Eli, you in there?" Mari Alvarez's warm voice carried through the screen, familiar and maternal. He considered pretending he wasn't home, but Mari would see right through that. She'd been checking on him almost daily since Maya passed, and there was no point in hiding. "Come on in, Mari," he called out, his voice rough from disuse. The screen door creaked as Mari entered, carrying a covered casserole dish. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in its usual neat bun, and her face creased with concern as she took in his half-eaten dinner. "Oh, honey, you're not eating those old leftovers again, are you?" "They're still good," Eli mumbled. But Mari was already whisking his plate away and replacing it with the steaming dish she'd brought. "This is fresh chicken enchiladas," she said, serving him a generous portion. "My mama's recipe. And don't you dare say you're not hungry. I heard about this morning at the cemetery. Dancing takes energy." Eli's shoulders tensed. "News travels fast. It's a small town," Mari replied softly, settling into Maya's chair without hesitation. She was the only person who ever sat there, who knew how to do it without making Eli flinch. "Claire told me what happened. Said it was beautiful." "It wasn't." Eli struggled to find the words. "It wasn't anything special, just some awkward steps. Love isn't about being special, Eli. It's about being present." Mari reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You need to let people love you. The community wants to help carry this weight." "I'm fine," he said automatically, though the enchiladas aroma was making his eyes water, or maybe it was something else. "You don't need to keep checking on me." "Maybe I need to check on you," Mari countered, her voice gentle but firm. "Maybe it helps me too, knowing I'm doing something Maya would have wanted. That girl loved you something fierce, and she wouldn't want you sitting here alone in the dark." Eli took a bite of the enchiladas to avoid responding. The warm, familiar flavors filled his mouth. Mari's cooking always tasted like comfort itself. "Thank you," he said finally, meaning both the food and her presence. "I do appreciate it." Mari nodded, understanding all he wasn't saying. She stood up, straightening her flowered blouse. "There's plenty more where that came from, and choir practice is still every Wednesday at 7, if you ever want to just sit and listen." "I know." Eli managed a small smile. "Maybe someday." After Mari left, the The house felt even quieter than before. Eli moved to his old recliner in the living room, the leather worn smooth from years of use. Maya's hair ribbon, the blue one she'd worn on her last day, lay on the side table where he always kept it. He picked it up, running the silk between his fingers as exhaustion from the emotional day settled over him. The TV remained dark and silent. His phone sat untouched on the charger, its notification light blinking unnoticed. As night deepened outside the windows, Eli drifted off to sleep in his chair, the ribbon clutched in his hand, unaware that across town and beyond, a video was beginning to spread, a father's dance of love, captured in the morning light, touching hearts far beyond the boundaries of their small town. The morning sun filtered through Eli's bedroom curtains, casting soft shadows on the worn carpet. His phone buzzed persistently on the nightstand, pulling him from a deep sleep. He'd overslept, something he never did, and the clock showed 8:47 a.m. More buzzing. The screen lit up with notification after notification, Claire Whitmore's name appearing multiple times. Eli sat up slowly, his back stiff from falling asleep in the recliner before moving to bed. He rubbed his eyes and picked up the phone, squinting at the brightness. 23 missed calls. 48 text messages. His heart rate quickened. Had something happened at the school? "Oh, Lord," he whispered, his fingers trembling as he opened the first message from Claire. "Eli, I'm so sorry. I should have asked first. The video of yesterday, it's gone viral. Local news picked it up. People are calling about donations. Please call me back." Video? His stomach dropped. He clicked the link she'd sent, and there it was. Janitor's beautiful tribute dance at daughter's grave goes viral. The thumbnail showed him in mid-step, arms raised just as Maya used to dance. The view count already showed over 10,000. The doorbell rang, making him jump. Mari's voice carried through the screen door. "Eli Brooks, I know you're in there. Open up, you need to see this." Still, in his wrinkled clothes from yesterday, Eli made his way to the door. Mari burst in, her iPad already playing the morning news. "Look at this, honey," she said, settling onto his couch. Channel 5 ran it at 6 a.m., and it's been playing every hour since. The news anchor's voice filled the small living room. In a touching moment captured yesterday at Oak Hill Cemetery, local school janitor Eli Brooks was filmed dancing in memory of his daughter Maya, who passed away last year. The impromptu tribute, accompanied by children singing "Nearer My God to Thee," has captured hearts across the region. Eli sank into his recliner, watching himself dance. The camera angle caught everything: his hesitation, the children's sweet voices, his awkward but heartfelt movements. In the background, barely visible on the hill, a suited figure could be seen dropping to his knees. "That's Damon Cole," Mari pointed out, "the CEO of Cole Dynamics. He was there visiting his wife's grave, I heard." Something about this really touched him. More notifications kept coming. Local radio stations wanted interviews. The school superintendent had called. Someone had set up a GoFundMe page for the Maya Brooks Memorial Arts Fund. $5,000 already, Mari read from her iPad, and growing by the minute. People are saying they want to help create something lasting in Maya's memory. Eli's hand shook as he set down his phone. "I don't understand. I was just dancing for my baby girl." His voice cracked on the last words. Mari moved to perch on the arm of his recliner, her hand warm on his shoulder. "Sometimes the smallest acts of love create the biggest ripples, Eli. You know Maya would have loved this, seeing dance bring people together." His phone rang again, Claire calling for the 4th time. But before he could answer, another notification popped up. From Cole Dynamics corporate office. "Mr. Brooks, our CEO was deeply moved by yesterday's events. We would like to discuss matching all donations to the memorial fund. No strings attached." The words blurred as tears filled his eyes. Mari squeezed his shoulder, her own eyes glistening. "You see," she said softly, "this is God's way of turning ashes into beauty." Eli stared at his phone, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support, the messages, the possibilities suddenly opening up before him. all because he'd said yes to a simple dance, because he'd chosen to honor Maya's memory in that quiet morning moment. "This is God's way of turning ashes into beauty," Mari repeated, and Eli felt something shift in his chest. Not an ending to his grief, but perhaps the first glimpse of a new beginning. The afternoon sun blazed through the high windows of Madison Elementary's gymnasium, creating bright squares on the freshly waxed floor. A burst pipe had flooded the hallway outside, and Eli Brooks worked methodically with his mop, pushing the water toward the drain. The steady swish-swish of the mop head against tile provided a rhythm to his work. Children's laughter echoed from the gym, where an after-school program was in full swing. The sound brought a slight smile to Eli's weathered face. It reminded him of Maya's voice, how it used to ring through these same halls. "Watch out there," he called gently to a pair of students who nearly slipped as they ran past. They slowed immediately, responding to his warm but firm tone. Down the hall, a man in khakis and a plain blue button-down shirt emerged from the main office. Damon Cole had dressed deliberately to blend in, leaving his usual tailored suits behind. He walked slowly, taking in the aged but well-maintained building, pausing to study the student artwork that lined the walls. The squeak of rubber soles against wet floor made Eli look up. A small girl, no more than 6, had rounded the corner too quickly. Her feet slid on the wet surface, and she landed hard on her bottom. Her face crumpled, more from shock than pain. "Hey now, sweetheart," Eli said, immediately setting his mop against the wall. He crouched down beside her, his knees creaking. "That was quite a slip, wasn't it?" The girl's lower lip trembled. "I was running to get my lunchbox," she admitted in a small voice. "Well, running inside isn't the best idea, is it?" Eli's voice was gentle, free of judgment. He offered his hand. "I'm Mr. Brooks, the building engineer. What's your name?" "Sarah," she sniffled, letting him help her up. Damon had stopped at the corner, watching the scene unfold. He pressed himself against the wall, trying to remain unnoticed. "Tell you what, Sarah," Eli continued, brushing off her clothes with paternal care. "How about we walk together to get that lunchbox? That way, if there are any more slippery spots, I can help you avoid them." Sarah nodded, her tears already forgotten. She slipped her tiny hand into Eli's large one, with complete trust. "My daddy says you danced," she said as they walked. "He showed me on his phone." Eli's step faltered for just a moment. "Yes, I did. For my daughter Maya. Did she like dancing too?" "She loved it more than anything in the world." Damon watched them pass, his throat tight. Neither noticed him in his careful disguise. He observed how Eli's broad shoulders remained straight despite the weight they carried, how his steps were measured and dignified even in his work boots and uniform. Sarah chatted the whole way to her classroom, and Eli listened with genuine interest to her story about her pet hamster. When they reached the door, she surprised him with a quick hug around his waist before darting inside. Returning to his mop, Eli resumed his work with the same careful attention he'd given the child. He hummed softly, the same hymn from the cemetery, though he didn't seem aware of it. Damon found himself rooted to the spot, studying the janitor's movements. Here was a man who had lost everything, yet he moved through the world with such gentle purpose. Each sweep of the mop was thorough, each interaction with passing students genuine. A group of teachers walked by, greeting Eli by name. He knew them all, asked about their families with specific details that showed he really listened. One mentioned the viral video, but Eli deflected the comment with humble grace. The CEO of Coal Dynamics felt something crack inside his carefully constructed walls. He'd come to observe, to understand the man who had inadvertently captured such a raw moment of his own breakdown. Instead, he found himself witnessing something that made his own wealth and power seem hollow. Eli knelt to wipe up a particularly stubborn puddle, then stood to wring out the mop. The simple movement carried a dignity that had nothing to do with status or position. It was the dignity of a man who knew exactly who he was and what mattered. Unable to watch any longer, Damon turned and walked quickly toward the exit, his expensive shoes squeaking slightly on the damp floor. His chest felt tight, his carefully ordered world tilting on its axis. At the door he paused and looked back. Eli was comforting another student now, offering a tissue and a kind word with the same care he'd shown while mopping the floor. "How does he carry himself with such grace?" Damon muttered, shaking his head as he pushed through the heavy door into the bright afternoon sun. The evening shadows stretched long across the church parking lot as Eli pulled up in his old pickup truck. The brick building of First Methodist stood solid and familiar against the darkening sky, its stained glass windows glowing warmly from the lights within. He sat for a moment, hands still on the steering wheel, trying to process the whirlwind his life had become in just 24 hours. Mari's car was already there, parked next to Claire's compact sedan. As Eli walked toward the side entrance, his work boots scuffing against the concrete, he could hear the muffled sound of their voices drifting from the church office. "There he is," Mari called out as he entered. She sat in one of the worn armchairs, a laptop balanced on her knees. Claire perched on the edge of the desk, her phone in hand, looking excited. "Eli, you won't believe what's happening," Claire said, her eyes bright. "The donations keep coming in, people from all over town, and even some from neighboring cities." "I still don't understand all this fuss," Eli said quietly, settling into the remaining chair. The office felt smaller than usual with the three of them crowded in, but somehow comforting too, like being wrapped in a warm blanket. Mari turned her laptop screen toward him. "Look at these numbers, honey. Over $5,000 already, and it's only been a day." Eli leaned forward, squinting at the screen. The fundraising page showed comment after comment, each attached to a donation. "For Maya's memory. God bless you, Mr. Brooks. Your dance touched our hearts." "And that's not even the biggest news," Claire said, practically bouncing with excitement. She grabbed her phone and opened her email. "This came in about an hour ago." Eli took the phone, holding it at arm's length to read better. The email was from Coal Dynamics' corporate office, written in formal business language but clear in its message. They would match every donation made to the Maya Brooks Memorial Fund, dollar for dollar, no strings attached. "Coal Dynamics?" Eli's voice cracked slightly. "The big company downtown?" "The very same." Mari nodded, her face soft with wonder. "God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he?" Claire pulled up a chair next to Eli. "We could do something real with this money. Something that would matter. Something Maya would have loved." The mention of his daughter's name still sent a sharp pain through Eli's chest, but for the first time, it came with something else. A tiny spark of possibility. He remembered Maya twirling in their living room, teaching the neighborhood kids her latest dance moves, her face glowing with joy. "A dance workshop," he said slowly, the words forming as the idea took shape. "Free classes for any child who wants to learn. Maya always said dancing should be for everyone." "Yes," Claire clapped her hands together. "We could use the church basement for classes. It's perfect. There's plenty of space, and the floor's already smooth for dancing." Mari was already typing on her laptop. "I know some retired dance teachers who might volunteer, and the music program at the high school might help too." Eli sat back in his chair, overwhelmed by their enthusiasm, but feeling something unfamiliar stirring in his heart. Was it hope? For the first time in a year, he could see a way forward that didn't feel like betraying Maya's memory. Instead, it felt like honoring it. "Maya used to say that dance was like prayer," he said quietly. "Moving your body to show what your heart feels." Mari reached over and squeezed his hand. "Then this workshop will be a beautiful prayer, won't it?" Claire was already making lists on her phone. "We'll need to organize a planning meeting, get everyone together who wants to help, figure out the logistics." Eli looked around the small office, at these two women who had refused to let him retreat into his grief. At the email still glowing on Claire's phone, offering unexpected support. At the donation page, showing how many people had been moved by a simple act of love. He took a deep breath. "Okay," he said, and was surprised to feel his lips curving into a smile. "Let's have a meeting. Let's do this for Maya." "Tomorrow evening?" Claire suggested. "Right here?" Mari was already pulling up her calendar. "I'll bring cookies, and I'll call Reverend Hale first thing in the morning about using the basement." Eli nodded, his smile growing stronger. "I'll be here, and I'll bring Maya's old dance notes. She kept everything in a journal, all her choreography, her ideas for teaching beginners. Perfect, Claire beamed. She stood up and gathered her things. I'll start spreading the word. We'll need volunteers, supplies. As they made their plans, Eli felt something shift inside him, like a heavy curtain being drawn back to let in light. The workshop wouldn't bring Maya back, but it might bring her spirit of joy to other children. It might make a difference, the way she always wanted to. The sunset painted Oak Hill Cemetery in soft oranges and purples. Eli's footsteps crunched on the gravel path as he made his way to Maya's grave, the evening breeze gentle against his face. After the overwhelming events at the church office, he needed this quiet moment with his daughter. Maya's headstone stood pristine against the darkening sky, the morning's wildflowers still fresh around its base. Eli knelt down, his knees creaking slightly, and touched the cool granite. The familiar motion brought comfort, like holding her hand. "Hey, baby girl," he whispered. "It's been quite a day." He smiled sadly, brushing a leaf from the stone. "People want to do something special in your name. A dance workshop, can you believe it? You would have loved that." The cemetery was peaceful at this hour, with only the occasional chirp of evening birds and rustling leaves. A few rows away, a young boy wandered between the headstones, his sneakers barely making a sound on the grass. Eli noticed his careful, almost dancing steps, reminded him of how Maya used to move. The crunch of expensive shoes on gravel drew Eli's attention. A man in a tailored suit, the CEO from this morning, he realized, walked slowly through the cemetery, his shoulders heavy with some invisible weight. Damon Cole looked different now, more human somehow, without the crowd of onlookers from this morning. The young boy Eli had noticed earlier stopped his wandering. He stood perfectly still, watching Damon with wide eyes. Something in the boy's posture spoke of nervousness and determination all at once. His dark eyes darted between Damon and something or someone behind him. Eli stayed where he was, not wanting to intrude on whatever was unfolding. The evening light caught the boy's face. He couldn't have been more than 13, with features that seemed vaguely familiar. The boy took a deep breath and moved toward Damon with small, hesitant steps. His sneakers barely made a sound on the grass as he approached. Damon noticed him and paused, his expression curious but guarded. Time seemed to slow as the boy came within a few feet of the CEO. His hands twisted the hem of his t-shirt, but his chin lifted with quiet courage. The cemetery held its breath. "Mommy says you're my daddy." The words, barely above a whisper, shattered the evening quiet. Eli felt his heart stop for a moment, the simple sentence hanging in the air like suspended crystal. Damon Cole went completely still. The polished businessman facade cracked, revealing raw shock underneath. His face drained of color, and his hands, usually so controlled, began to tremble. The boy, Noah, Eli remembered hearing the name called out earlier, stood his ground, though his lower lip quivered slightly. He looked so small next to Damon's tall frame, yet there was something powerful in his vulnerability. A woman's voice cut through the heavy silence. "Noah!" The sound was sharp with panic. A Latina woman in her mid-40s rushed across the cemetery, her sensible shoes crushing the grass. Her face was a mask of horror and protective fury. Eli recognized her. Lila Santos, one of the school's former housekeepers. "Noah, come here right now!" Her voice shook as she reached for her son. Noah stepped back toward his mother, but his eyes stayed locked on Damon's face, searching for something. Recognition, acceptance, any sign of connection. Damon remained frozen, his expensive suit suddenly looking like armor that offered no protection. Lila grabbed Noah's hand, pulling him close to her side. Her other hand pressed against her son's shoulder, as if she could shield him from the truth he'd just spoken aloud. In that moment, Eli's eyes met Damon's across the rows of headstones. The CEO's face held a storm of emotions: shock, fear, guilt, and something that looked almost like longing. The connection lasted only seconds, but in it, Eli saw the careful walls of Damon Cole's world beginning to crack. The evening breeze picked up, rustling the flowers on Maya's grave. The sound seemed to break whatever spell had frozen them all in place. Lila turned away, guiding Noah quickly toward the cemetery gate. The boy glanced back once, his expression a mixture of hope and hurt that made Eli's heart ache. Damon stood rooted to the spot, his usual confidence shattered. His gaze remained locked with Eli's, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The weight of secrets revealed, the power of children's truth, the way life could change in the space of a whispered sentence. The orange sky had deepened to purple, and the first stars were beginning to appear above Oak Hill Cemetery. Maya's headstone stood witness to it all, her name etched in stone, a reminder of how precious and fragile family could be. The porch light cast a warm glow on Lila's small brick house as Eli followed her up the worn concrete steps. His mind was still reeling from the cemetery encounter. Noah trailed behind them, his shoulders hunched, clutching his sketchbook like a shield. "Please, come in," Lila said softly, unlocking the door. Her hands trembled slightly as she flicked on the lights. The living room was modest but immaculate. Family photos lined the walls, mostly of Noah at different ages. Dance trophies and art ribbons filled a small shelf. A worn sofa with carefully arranged cushions sat beneath a window with fresh curtains. "Noah, honey." Lila touched her son's shoulder. "Could you go to your room for a few minutes? I need to talk to Mr. Brooks." Noah hesitated, then nodded, disappearing down the hallway. The sound of his bedroom door clicking shut echoed in the quiet house. Lila gestured to the sofa. "Would you like some tea?" "No, thank you," Eli replied, settling onto the edge of the cushion. "I think we both know this isn't a tea conversation." Lila sank into an armchair across from him, smoothing her uniform skirt with shaking hands. The fluorescent lights from the kitchen cast harsh shadows across her face, emphasizing the worry lines around her eyes. "I never meant for anyone to find out," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "especially not like this." Eli waited patiently as she gathered her thoughts. Through the thin walls, they could hear Noah's radio playing softly. "It was 6 years ago," Lila continued. "I was working as a housekeeper at the Cole Mansion. Damon's wife had passed away the year before." "He was." She paused, searching for words. "He was kind to me, different from other employers. He noticed when I was tired, made sure I took breaks. We talked sometimes. About books. About life." She stood up suddenly, pacing to the window. "One night, I was working late. He'd had too much to drink, was crying about his wife. I stayed to make sure he was okay. And then..." She wrapped her arms around herself. "It was just once. One moment of weakness." Eli shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. "And Noah, when I found out I was pregnant, I quit immediately. Left a note saying I'd found another job." Lila turned back to face him, her eyes glistening. "I was scared, Eli. Single mothers who accuse wealthy men of anything. We don't win those battles. I had bills to pay, a baby to protect. Does Damon know? I mean before today?" "No." Lila's voice cracked. "I never told him. Noah figured it out on his own last year, saw Damon's picture in the paper, and noticed they had the same eyes, same smile. He kept asking questions until I finally told him the truth." A floorboard creaked, and they both turned to see Noah standing in the hallway, his sketchbook clutched to his chest. "Can I come back now?" he asked quietly. Lila nodded, and Noah padded over to sit beside her, on the arm of her chair. She wrapped an arm around his waist. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. "I'm so sorry for all of this." Noah leaned into her embrace but looked at Eli. "Mr. Brooks, can I show you something?" At Eli's nod, Noah opened his sketchbook. Inside were dozens of drawings, dancers in motion, faces filled with joy, bodies twirling through space. The talent was obvious, even to Eli's untrained eye. "These are beautiful, Noah," Eli said softly. "I want to dance." Noah's voice was small but determined. "Like the kids in your workshop will, but..." He glanced at his mother, then back to Eli. "Will it be okay? Even with everything that's happening? Can it still be a safe place for me?" The question hung heavy in the air. Eli felt the weight of it, remembered Maya's own love of dance, how it had given her freedom and joy, even in her hardest days. "The workshop is for everyone," Eli said finally. "Every child who needs a place to belong. That includes you, Noah." Relief flooded the boy's face, and Lila squeezed him tighter, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. Eli stood slowly, his joints protesting. The evening's revelation sat heavy on his shoulders. "I should go," he said. "It's getting late." At the door, Lila caught his arm. "Eli, I know this is a lot to ask, but please, be careful with this truth. It could hurt so many people." He nodded, stepping out into the cool night air. The stars were bright overhead as he walked to his car, his heart troubled. "Lord," he whispered, looking up at the vast sky, "what are you asking me to carry?" The morning sun warmed Mari's front porch as steam rose from 2 coffee mugs. Wind chimes tinkled softly in the breeze, and potted geraniums added splashes of bright red to the weathered wood railings. Eli sat in his usual spot, a creaky rocking chair that had seen better days, while Mari settled into her wicker seat. "Something's eating at you," Mari said, stirring honey into her coffee. "I can see it in your eyes." Eli's hands wrapped tightly around his mug. "Mari, I witnessed something at the cemetery last night that I can't shake." "Go on," she encouraged, her dark eyes kind and patient. "You know that CEO who's matching the donations?" Eli's voice dropped lower. "Damon Cole? Well, he was there at Maya's grave. And this little boy, Noah Santos, came up to him and—" He paused, struggling with the weight of the secret. The boy told him he was his father. Mari's spoon clinked against her cup as she set it down. "Oh my," she breathed. "Lila Santos's boy?" "Yes, she used to work as his housekeeper years ago." Eli rubbed his forehead. "She invited me in afterward, told me everything, one time, just once, after his wife died." He trailed off, not needing to finish. "And now the truth comes out," Mari mused. She reached over and patted Eli's hand. "The Lord has his ways of bringing light to darkness. But what am I supposed to do with this knowledge? Noah asked if the dance workshop could be a place for him. How can I say no? But if this gets out—" "Listen to me, Eli Brooks." Mari straightened in her chair. "You've spent a year hiding from life after Maya's passing. Maybe God is giving you a chance to help another father and child find their way to each other. But the scandal could destroy everything. The workshop, the funding. Truth has a cost," Mari said firmly. "But lies cost more in the end. You know that." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Choose compassion, Eli. Choose truth. The rest will follow." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the neighborhood come alive with morning activities. Children rode past on bikes, and someone down the street mowed their lawn. "I just want to do right by Maya's memory," Eli finally said. "Then do what Maya would do. Open your heart to someone who needs help." The rest of the morning passed quietly as Eli went about his usual tasks at the school. He was mopping the gymnasium floor when footsteps echoed through the empty space. Looking up, he recognized Damon Cole, this time in an expensive suit rather than the casual clothes from yesterday. "Mr. Brooks?" Damon's voice carried across the polished floor. "May I speak with you?" Eli leaned his mop against the wall. "I've been expecting you." Damon's confident facade cracked slightly. "Then you know why I'm here." "I do." Eli gestured to the bleachers. "Have a seat." They sat, an unlikely pair, the janitor in his work clothes and the CEO in his tailored suit. Damon's hands fidgeted with his tie. "I don't know what to do," Damon admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "If this gets out, the board will have concerns. The stock could drop. Years of building trust could vanish overnight." "And your son?" Eli asked quietly. "What about his trust?" Damon's shoulders slumped. "I've thought of nothing else since last night. I want to know him, Mr. Brooks. But I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of everything changing. Of failing him like—" Damon swallowed hard. "Like I failed his mother." Eli studied the man beside him, seeing beyond the expensive suit to the scared father underneath. "You know what I've learned this past year? Running from pain doesn't make it hurt less." "What would you have me do?" "That depends," Eli said, standing up. "Are you here for advice on damage control, or are you asking for help in doing the right thing?" Damon looked up, meeting Eli's steady gaze. "I want to do right by my son, but I need guidance. Will you help me?" Eli crossed his arms, his voice firm but kind. "If you want my help, you need to walk into the light. No more secrets, no more hiding. That's my condition." The gymnasium fell silent, except for the distant sound of children playing outside. Damon stood, straightening his jacket, a man used to being in control, now faced with surrendering it. "The light," he repeated softly. "It's been a long time since I've stood there." "It's never too late to start," Eli replied. The church basement had always been a dreary place, with its gray concrete floors and flickering fluorescent lights. But on this Saturday morning, it hummed with new energy as brushes scraped against walls and mops swished across floors. Eli worked steadily in his corner, his experienced hands making quick work of a particularly stubborn stain. The sound of children's laughter echoed off the walls as Claire organized a group of volunteers, their small hands clutching paintbrushes loaded with warm yellow paint. "Watch those drips, Tommy," Mari called out, rushing over with a rag to catch paint before it hit the floor. "Remember, we're making this place beautiful, not dyeing it." The children giggled, and Tommy's freckled face reddened as he adjusted his grip on the brush. Claire moved between the young painters, offering gentle guidance and praise. "That's perfect, Sarah. Nice, even strokes." Near the entrance, Noah Santos stood quietly, watching the activity with curious eyes. His fingers fidgeted with the hem of his oversized t-shirt as he took tentative steps into the room. "Noah," Claire's warm voice carried across the space, "we could really use your help with the bulletin board. I heard you're quite the artist." The boy's eyes lit up, though he glanced quickly at the door before moving forward. Eli noticed his hesitation and set down his mop, wiping his hands on his jeans as he approached. "How about we work on it together?" Eli suggested, his voice gentle. "I've got all these photos of dancers to arrange, but I'm not so good at making things look pretty." Noah nodded, some tension leaving his shoulders as he followed Eli to the corner where a large corkboard leaned against the wall. They began sorting through pictures, ballet dancers, hip-hop performers, traditional folk dancers from around the world. "Where should we put this one?" Eli held up a photo of a graceful ballerina. Noah studied it carefully. "Maybe in the center? She looks like she's floating." As they worked, more volunteers filtered in. Someone brought donuts and coffee, and the smell of fresh paint mixed with sweet sugar and bitter coffee filled the air. Mari started humming an old gospel tune, and soon others joined in. Unknown to the busy workers, Damon Cole stood in the shadowy stairwell, watching through the crack in the door. His expensive suit looked out of place among the paint cans and cleaning supplies, but his eyes never left Noah as the boy arranged photos with growing confidence. "Look what I found." Claire's voice rose above the general chatter as she emerged from a storage closet, holding up a box of ballet slippers. "They're old, but still good. The dance studio downtown donated them." Children gathered around, exclaiming over the worn pink satin. Noah hung back, but his eyes followed the box with longing. Eli noticed and picked up a pair. "These might be your size," he said casually, holding them out to Noah. "Want to try them on?" In the stairwell, Damon's hands clenched at his sides as he watched his son carefully take the slippers. Noah sat on a folding chair, slipping off his sneakers. The slippers fit perfectly, and a small smile crept across his face as he stood and took a few experimental steps. Mari appeared with an old boombox, setting it on a newly cleaned table. "Can't have a dance studio without music," she declared, pressing play. Soft piano notes filled the room, and Noah's feet moved almost unconsciously in response. "My Maya loved that piece," Eli said softly, recognition in his eyes. "Moonlight Sonata." The moment hung suspended, tender and fragile, as Noah began to move more deliberately, testing the smooth concrete floor with his new slippers. Claire watched with barely contained excitement while Mari dabbed at her eyes with her paint-stained rag. In the stairwell, Damon pressed a hand to his mouth, his eyes glistening as he watched his son dance. The boy moved with natural grace, surprising everyone in the room. Even the other children stopped their painting to watch. "Noah," Claire breathed, "that's beautiful. Have you taken classes before?" The boy shook his head, suddenly self-conscious as he realized everyone was watching. I just watch videos sometimes. On my phone." "Well, "You've got a gift," Mari declared firmly. "This workshop is exactly where you belong." Eli picked up a piece of paper from the supply table and grabbed a marker. In careful letters, he wrote, "Class Schedule," at the top. "When should we start?" he asked, looking around at the transformed space. The walls were nearly finished, sunshine yellow making the room feel warmer and more welcoming. Posters and photos created an inspiring collage on one wall, and the floor gleamed with fresh wax. Folding chairs lined the walls, and mirrors would soon be installed. "Next Saturday?" Claire suggested. "We could do beginners in the morning, intermediate in the afternoon. I can put up flyers at school on Monday." Noah had moved to the corner to remove the ballet slippers, but his movements were reluctant, as if he didn't want to let them go. "Those are yours now," Eli said quietly. "Every dancer needs their own shoes." The boy's head shot up, hope and disbelief warring in his expression. "Really?" "Really," Eli confirmed. "You can be our first official student." In the stairwell, Damon silently backed away, his shoes making no sound on the steps. The last thing he saw was his son carefully placing the ballet slippers in his backpack, handling them like precious treasures. Back in the basement, Mari was already making lists of needed supplies while Claire drafted the class schedule. Children continued painting the remaining walls, their chatter mixing with the classical music still playing softly in the background. Eli stood in the middle of the room, taking it all in. The space that had once stored old hymnals and broken furniture was transforming into something new, something full of possibility. Maya would have loved it. "Next Saturday then," he said, and the words felt like a prayer. 10 o'clock. Noah nodded solemnly, shouldering his backpack with its precious cargo. "I'll be here," he promised. And for the first time since Eli had met him, the boy's smile reached his eyes. The old church basement looked different in the early evening light. Warm sunbeams filtered through the high windows, catching dust motes that danced in the air. The fresh yellow paint brightened the walls, and someone had hung rainbow-colored streamers from the ceiling pipes. A row of donated mirrors lined one wall, their edges decorated with paper flowers the children had made. Eli stood near the old CD player, fiddling with the buttons. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the volume. It had been so long since he'd heard music in a room full of people. Maya used to fill their house with it, spinning and twirling through every room until even the furniture seemed to sway with her rhythm. The first students began trickling in, their voices bouncing off the walls. Claire greeted each one with a warm hug, checking names off her clipboard. She wore dance clothes instead of her usual teaching outfit, black leggings and a flowing top that made her look younger, more like the big sister she'd become to these kids. "Mr. Brooks," Tommy called out, running straight to Eli. "Did you bring the special slippers?" Eli nodded, pointing to boxes lined up against the wall. "All sorted by size. Find your name tag." More children arrived, filling the space with chatter and nervous energy. Some wore proper dance clothes, others just comfortable pants and t-shirts. Eli had made sure everyone knew that fancy outfits weren't required, just willing hearts and respectful attitudes. Noah slipped in quietly, staying close to the wall. His eyes were wide, taking everything in, but his shoulders curved inward like he was trying to disappear. Claire spotted him immediately and walked over, her smile gentle and encouraging. "I'm so glad you came," she said, handing him a name tag. "We saved you a spot right up front." Noah shook his head quickly. Can I stay in the back? Just for today?" "Of course." Claire squeezed his shoulder. "Wherever you feel comfortable." Mari arrived with her guitar, setting up in the corner. She'd offered to play live music for some of the exercises, adding her warm voice to the simple tunes they'd chosen. The children gathered around her like moths to a flame, begging for their favorite songs. As Eli watched the room fill up, something tight in his chest began to loosen. The basement was transforming into exactly what they'd hoped, a safe place, a joyful place. He caught himself smiling without realizing it, the expression feeling both foreign and familiar on his face. "Okay, everyone," Claire called out, clapping her hands. "Let's make a circle for warm-ups." The children scrambled to find spots, some pushing forward eagerly, others hanging back. Noah stayed near the wall, but he followed the movements as Claire led them through simple stretches. His natural grace was apparent even in these basic steps. Mari strummed her guitar softly, providing a gentle rhythm. "Roll your shoulders, reach up high, now touch your toes if you can try." Laughter burst out as several kids toppled over dramatically. Eli moved around the circle, helping smaller ones keep their balance, remembering how Maya used to giggle at her own wobbly attempts. The workshop progressed through basic steps, Claire demonstrating with patience and enthusiasm. Some kids picked up the movements quickly, while others stumbled good-naturedly. But no one gave up, and no one made fun of mistakes. That had been Eli's one firm rule: kindness above all else. About halfway through the session, movement near the door caught Eli's attention. A man in a plain brown jacket stood in the shadows, partially hidden behind a support beam. If Eli hadn't been used to noticing details while cleaning the school's halls, he might have missed him entirely. But there was something familiar about the way the man held himself, rigid yet uncertain. Damon Cole had traded his usual business suit for casual clothes, but he couldn't quite hide his CEO bearing. He watched the class intently, his eyes fixed on Noah, who was slowly beginning to mirror Claire's movements with increasing confidence. Mari started playing "Nearer, My God, to Thee," the same hymn from the cemetery, but with a gentler rhythm suitable for practice. Several children recognized it and hummed along. Noah's face lit up as he found the beat, his body moving with natural rhythm that reminded Eli painfully of Maya. When Eli glanced back at the door, he saw tears tracking down Damon's cheeks. The powerful CEO made no move to wipe them away, seemingly unaware of them as he watched his son dance for the first time. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Then Damon's eyes shifted, meeting Eli's directly. Recognition passed between them, not just of who they were, but of what this moment meant. Of what the workshop could mean for Noah, for all the children who needed a place to belong. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the cramped meeting room of Oak Ridge Elementary. Eli shifted uncomfortably in the hard plastic chair, tugging at his freshly pressed collar. Around him, parents and teachers filled every seat, with more standing along the walls. Mari sat beside him, her warm presence steadying his nerves. Board Chairman Peterson shuffled some papers, his wire-rimmed glasses catching the harsh light. Next item on the agenda: the unauthorized use of school facilities for dance classes? His tone dripped with skepticism. Mrs. Winters, a board member with perfectly coiffed silver hair, cleared her throat. "I move to discuss the immediate cessation of these activities." She peered down her nose at Eli. "While we appreciate Mr. Astenheim, Brooks' years of service as our custodian, there are proper channels for program proposals." Eli's hands clenched in his lap. The word custodian had never sounded so much like an insult. "If I may speak," he started, his voice quiet but firm. The microphone squealed slightly as he leaned forward. "The janitor wishes to address the board," Mrs. Winters announced, earning disapproving murmurs from the crowd. Mari squeezed his arm gently. Eli took a deep breath, remembering Maya's smile, her pirouettes in their tiny living room. "My name is Eli Brooks," he began, meeting their eyes one by one. "I've worked at this school for 12 years. I've mopped these halls, fixed broken desks, and made sure every child had a clean, safe place to learn." He pulled Maya's purple hair ribbon from his pocket, running it through his fingers. "My daughter Maya danced in these halls. She dreamed of teaching other children to dance. When she passed, this community wrapped their arms around me. They helped create something beautiful in her memory." Mrs. Winters cut in sharply. "Sentiment aside, janitors shouldn't be running programs. We have qualified instructors. With all due respect," a voice rang out from the back. Claire stood up, her teacher's badge gleaming. "Eli Brooks has more qualifications than a job title. He's transformed lives through this workshop. My students can't stop talking about it." Another parent stood. "My son Noah never wanted to dance before. Now he practices every day." He smiles again. "Order, please." Chairman Peterson tapped his gavel, but more voices joined in. "My daughter feels seen there. It's the first free arts program we've had in years. This is about class prejudice, plain and simple." Mari rose slowly, her her dignity filling the room. "I've been teaching music in this town for 40 years. I've never seen anyone connect with children like Eli does. He doesn't just teach dance. He teaches hope." Mrs. Winter's face flushed red. "This is highly irregular. We can't have maintenance staff running unauthorized—" "Actually," Claire interrupted, holding up a thick folder, "I have letters from every homeroom teacher supporting the program. We've documented improved attendance, behavior, and engagement since it started, and it cost the district nothing." The chairman looked increasingly uncomfortable. Parents continued to stand, forming a wall of support behind Eli. "Perhaps," Peterson said carefully, "we should table this discussion until—" "My daddy dances with me now," a small voice piped up. Noah had slipped in with his mother, Lila. "Mr. Brooks showed me it's okay for boys to dance too." Eli's throat tightened. He stood slowly, straightening his shoulders. "I may be a janitor," he said quietly, "but I'm also a father. I'm a member of this community, and I believe every child deserves a chance to find their joy, no matter who teaches them." The room erupted in applause. Mrs. Winters gathered her papers with shaking hands, her face mottled with anger and embarrassment. "We'll take this under advisement," Chairman Peterson announced weakly, but the crowd was already surrounding Eli, offering handshakes and hugs. Eli felt lightheaded. His hands trembled as he gathered his coat. The support was overwhelming, but the naked disdain from some board members had cut deep. Maya's ribbon felt heavy in his pocket. Mari linked her arm through his. "Let's get you home, friend. You did good." They walked out together, followed by a stream of supporters. Eli's steps were unsteady, but his back was straight. Behind them, the boardroom buzzed with heated discussion, but he didn't look back. In the parking lot, Claire caught up with them. "We're not done fighting," she promised, her eyes fierce with determination. Eli nodded, unable to speak. The evening air felt cool on his face, and somewhere in the distance, church bells were ringing. The sound reminded him of Maya, of music, of second chances. He climbed into his old pickup truck, watching through the windshield as parents and teachers lingered, talking animatedly. Mari waved from her car, her face proud but concerned. His hands shook as he put the key in the ignition. The evening sun cast long shadows through the stained glass windows of New Hope Community Church, painting Reverend Hale's office in muted purples and golds. Damon Cole stood at the window, his normally pristine suit jacket draped over a chair, his tie loosened. His reflection in the glass looked worn, shoulders hunched under an invisible weight. Reverend Hale sat quietly in his weathered leather chair, watching the troubled man before him. The office was warm and lived in, with books lining dark wooden shelves and a desk that had seen decades of conversations just like this one. A coffee mug with "Jesus Loves You" printed in faded letters sat half-empty on a worn coaster. "I built everything from nothing," Damon said, finally, his voice barely above a whisper. 25 years of work, the company employs thousands." He turned from the window, lines of worry etched deep around his eyes. "If this gets out—" "Sit down, Damon," Reverend Hale said gently, gesturing to the chair across from him. "You're wearing a path in my carpet." Damon sank into the chair, running his hands over his face. "The board would force me out. Stock would plummet. People would lose their jobs." He looked up at the Reverend. "How can I justify destroying so many lives just to clear my conscience?" The old pastor leaned forward, his kind eyes fixed on Damon. "Tell me about Noah." The question caught Damon off guard. He blinked, then said, "He has Lila's smile, and my mother's eyes." His voice softened. "He dances beautifully. I've been watching him at the workshop, in the back row where no one notices me. He moves like he's speaking to heaven." "And what does heaven hear?" Reverend Hale asked quietly. "A boy without a father," Damon replied, his voice cracking. "A child I abandoned before I even knew he existed." The Reverend nodded slowly. "You're afraid of losing everything you've built. That's natural." He reached for his well-worn Bible on the desk. "But what if everything you've built was meant to lead you to this moment?" Damon laughed bitterly. "You think God orchestrated a corporate scandal?" "I think God orchestrated a chance for redemption," Reverend Hale corrected. "Through a little girl's memory, a father's dance, and a son's courage to speak truth." He opened his Bible to a marked page. You know, when David was confronted with his sin, he had everything to lose. The kingdom, his reputation, his legacy. But it was only in confession that he found his way back to God's heart. This isn't biblical times, Damon protested. The media would crucify me. CEO impregnates housekeeper, hides child for years. The headlines write themselves. Yes, they do, the Reverend agreed. And they'll be painful. The truth often is. He leaned back in his chair. But let me ask you something, Damon. When you're lying in your bed at night, in that big, empty house, what keeps you awake? Damon's jaw tightened. You know what keeps me awake? Say it. That somewhere across town my son is saying his prayers without me, Damon whispered. That he thinks his father didn't want him. Reverend Hale nodded slowly. The truth may cost you everything, but it will give your son a father. He pulled a small slip of paper from his Bible and wrote something on it. That's worth more than all the stock options in the world. Damon stared at his hands. I don't know how to be a father. None of us do at first, the Reverend said with a gentle smile. We learn by showing up, by trying, by failing, and by trying again. He held out the slip of paper. Start with the truth, Damon. The rest will follow. Damon took the paper with trembling fingers. His eyes scanned the written verse, and something in his face shifted, like a door opening to let in light. What if I lose everything? He asked one final time. Then you'll discover what matters, Reverend Hale replied. And you might find that what you've been afraid to lose isn't what you needed to keep. Damon stood slowly, tucking the Bible verse into his pocket. He picked up his jacket, straightening his shoulders, as if preparing to carry a new kind of weight. The evening light had deepened to purple, and the street lamps were coming on outside. The old Marshall Community Theater hummed with activity. Dust motes danced in the streams of afternoon light that poured through the high windows. The worn red velvet seats, empty for now, waited patiently for the upcoming recital as voices and music echoed through the historic building. Mari Alvarez stood at the front of the stage, her silver-streaked hair caught in the spotlight. Her hands moved gracefully through the air as she conducted the small choir. Again, from the second verse, she called out, her voice warm but firm. Remember to breathe from your diaphragm. The singers launched into Amazing Grace, their harmonies filling the space with hope. In the wings, young dancers in practice, clothes stretched and whispered, waiting for their turn. Eli Brooks sat in the third row, watching everything with careful attention. His custodian's uniform was replaced with a simple blue button-down shirt and khakis, his planning clothes, as Mari liked to tease him. He made notes on a worn clipboard, checking off items from his recital preparation list. On stage left, Noah Santos moved through his solo routine. His movements were precise, yet flowing, each gesture carrying the same quiet grace that marked everything the boy did. Eli couldn't help but smile, remembering how shy Noah had been just weeks ago. He's got natural talent, Claire whispered, sliding into the seat next to Eli. Maya would have loved dancing with him. Eli nodded, his throat tight. She would have taken him under her wing right away. At the back of the theater, a door opened quietly. Damon Cole slipped in, trying to be inconspicuous in his casual weekend clothes. But Noah spotted him immediately, his dance steps faltering for just a moment before he recovered. Mari wrapped up the choir practice, and the singers dispersed. She noticed Damon and gave him a small, encouraging nod. Take 15 minutes, everyone, she announced. Get some water, stretch, then we'll run the finale. Noah stood uncertainly at the edge of the stage, looking between his mother Lila, who sat in the front row with her sewing kit repairing costumes, and Damon. Eli watched as Damon slowly made his way down the aisle. Hi, Noah, Damon said, his voice carrying a tremor that his boardroom speeches never had. That was beautiful dancing. Noah's fingers played with the hem of his t-shirt. Thanks, he said softly. Mom says I get my grace from her side. A small laugh escaped Damon. She's right about that. I have 2 left feet. Really? Noah's eyes sparked with interest. But you're good at other things, right? Mom says you build big buildings and help companies grow. I do. Damon nodded, then added quietly. But I haven't always been good at the most important things. Lila had stopped her sewing, watching the interaction with careful eyes. Eli pretended to study his clipboard, but his attention was fixed on the delicate moment unfolding. "Would you?" Damon cleared his throat. "Would you show me some of your drawings? Your mom mentioned you like to sketch the dancers." Noah's face lit up. He hopped down from the stage and pulled a sketchbook from his backpack. Sitting in the front row, he began showing Damon page after page of pencil drawings. Dancers in motion, Mari conducting, Eli watching from the wings. "These are incredible," Damon said, genuine amazement in his voice. "You see everything, don't you? All the little details most people miss." Noah nodded. "I like watching people when they're doing what they love. They become more real." The wisdom in those words seemed to hit Damon hard. He looked at his son, really looked at him, and Eli could see the moment something shifted in the CEO's carefully constructed walls. Mari started gathering everyone back for the finale rehearsal. Noah closed his sketchbook, hesitating before asking, "Will you watch me dance in the recital?" "I wouldn't miss it," Damon said firmly. "I'll be right here in the front row." After Noah hurried back to join the other dancers, Damon approached Lila. Eli couldn't help but overhear their quiet conversation. "He's extraordinary," Damon said, his voice rough with emotion. "He is," Lila agreed. "And he deserves more than shadows and secrets." Damon ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that made him look more human than any board meeting photo ever had. "I know. I've been thinking about what Reverend Hale said, about the cost of truth." "And?" Lila's question was gentle but firm. "After the recital," Damon said, meeting her eyes, "when everyone's here, the families, the community, the board members who promised to attend, I'll tell them everything. No more hiding. Noah deserves a father who's brave enough to stand in the light." Lila studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "For Noah's sake, I hope you mean that." On stage, Mari was arranging the dancers for the finale. Noah took his position, his movements confident and sure. The music began, and as Eli watched the boy dance, he sent up a quiet prayer that Damon's promise would hold true. The Marshall Community Theater buzzed with anticipation. Every red velvet seat held someone from town: teachers, parents, shop owners, and even the usually stern-faced school board members. The old chandeliers cast a warm glow across eager faces, while programs rustled softly in countless hands. Backstage, Eli Brooks adjusted his tie for the 10th time, his weathered hands trembling slightly. He could hear the murmur of the crowd through the heavy curtain. Mari appeared at his side, squeezing his arm gently. "Deep breaths," she whispered. "Maya's watching, you know." Eli nodded, unable to speak. His heart felt too full, like it might burst. A year ago, he'd been lost in grief's darkness. Now here he was, about to open a show dedicated to his daughter's memory. The house lights dimmed. A hush fell over the audience. Eli walked onto the stage, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The single spotlight found him, and he blinked against its brightness. "Dear Lord," he began, his voice quavering but growing stronger with each word. "We gather tonight to celebrate the gift of dance, the power of community, and the memory of a little girl who taught us all how to move with joy." He paused, swallowing hard. "Maya, this is for you, baby." The curtain rose slowly. 20 children stood in formation, wearing simple practice clothes and donated ballet slippers. As the first notes of music filled the theater, they began to move, some gracefully, others with endearing awkwardness, but all with pure hearts. In the wings, Mari watched through tears as the youngest group twirled to "Jesus Loves Me," their faces serious with concentration. She remembered how many of them had been too shy to even try at first. Now, they danced with uninhibited happiness. The program flowed from one number to the next. A group of middle schoolers performed a hip-hop routine to an upbeat gospel song. 3 elderly widowers, who joined the workshop to honor their late wives, walked through a gentle waltz that brought sniffles from the audience. Halfway through the show, Mari took center stage. She'd chosen "Amazing Grace," but with a blues arrangement that made the familiar hymn new again. Her rich contralto filled every corner of the theater, carrying years of both heartache and hope. By the final verse, Many in the audience were openly weeping. Backstage, in a quiet corner, Damon Cole stood with his hand on Noah's shoulder. The boy was dressed in black pants and a white shirt that matched his father's, though neither had planned it. They watched the performances together in silence, both feeling the weight of what was to come. Noah's dance would be the finale. He shifted nervously from foot to foot, but Damon's steady presence seemed to calm him. For the first time in his life, his father was there to see him perform. "You'll do great," Damon whispered, squeezing Noah's shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, son." The word son hung in the air between them, precious and new. Noah looked up at his father, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Really?" Damon knelt down to Noah's eye level, his expensive suit pressing against the dusty floor. "Really," he said firmly. "I love you, Noah. No matter what happens next, remember that." Lila appeared beside them, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She nodded at Damon, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. They were ready. The current number ended, and applause filled the theater. Eli stepped back onto stage, this time standing tall and proud. "Before our final performance," he announced, "Mr. Damon Cole would like to say a few words." Damon squeezed Noah's hand one last time and walked toward the stage. His footsteps were steady, though his heart raced. The spotlight found him as he approached the microphone, casting his shadow long across the wooden boards. The audience grew quiet, waiting. Some knew him as the CEO who'd funded the program. Others had only seen his name in the papers. None yet knew the full truth he was about to share. He gripped the microphone stand, took a deep breath, and looked out at the sea of faces before him. Damon Cole stood at the microphone, his fingers gripping the wooden podium. The stage lights felt warm on his face as he looked out at the sea of expectant faces. His heart thundered in his chest. Behind him, the children who had just finished dancing stood in their positions, still breathing heavily from their performance. "Good evening," he began, his usually confident voice wavering slightly. "Tonight, we've witnessed something extraordinary. The Maya Brooks Memorial Arts Fund has." He paused, drawing a deep breath. His eyes found Noah in the wings, the boy's face hopeful and trusting. Lila stood nearby, her hands clasped tightly together. The moment stretched like a thread about to snap. Damon opened his mouth to continue, to finally speak his truth, when a distinctive buzz rippled through the audience. One phone, then another, then dozens lit up simultaneously. The soft blue glow of screens illuminated confused faces throughout the theater. Mrs. Henderson, in the front row, gasped audibly. Several people began whispering, their heads bent together over their phones. Damon felt his own device vibrate in his pocket, but he already knew. The blood drained from his face as he watched realization spread across the audience like a wave. From the wings, Eli saw the headline before anyone could say it aloud. "Cole Dynamics CEO's secret love, child with housekeeper, sources say he paid for silence." The accompanying photo showed a younger Lila leaving the Cole mansion, her face partially hidden but unmistakable. The whispers grew louder, becoming a steady murmur. Camera flashes began popping from the audience as people captured the moment. Damon stood frozen at the podium, his prepared speech forgotten in his hands. "Mom?" Noah's voice cracked from the wings. Lila reached for him, but he jerked away. Tears welled in his eyes as he looked between his mother and Damon. You said he was going to tell everyone himself." The boy's words carried in the now silent theater. Someone in the audience shouted, "Is it true, Mr. Cole?" Before anyone could react, Noah bolted. His dance shoes made soft pattering sounds as he ran through the backstage area and out the emergency exit. The door slammed with a bang that echoed through the stunned silence. "Noah!" Lila called out, her voice breaking. She hurried after her son, dignity forgotten in her maternal panic. Outside, car doors slammed. Through the theater's front windows, the flash of cameras grew more intense. Local news vans were already pulling up, their satellite dishes extending toward the sky. "Mr. Cole!" A reporter had somehow made it inside, pushing down the aisle with a microphone extended. "Is it true you've been paying hush money to hide your illegitimate son?" Security guards materialized around Damon, but the damage was done. The children on stage began to cry, confused by the chaos. Parents rushed forward to collect them, shooting accusatory glances at both Damon and Eli. "This whole thing was just a PR stunt," someone shouted from the balcony. "Using that poor dead girl's memory to cover up his scandal?" Eli watched helplessly as the beautiful evening crumbled around them. The wall of names they'd created, Maya's name central among them, seemed to mock them now. All the hope, all the healing of the past weeks felt like ash in his mouth. Mari tried to restore order, stepping to the microphone Damon had abandoned. "Please, everyone. The children have worked so hard," but it was too late. The audience was standing now, some leaving in disgust, others pressing forward with phones raised high, trying to capture the moment of Damon Cole's public downfall. Through the chaos, Eli caught sight of Damon's face. The CEO's mask had cracked completely, revealing raw anguish underneath. His corporate aides were already flanking him, speaking urgently into their phones while steering him toward the stage exit. "Mr. Cole," Eli called out, taking a step forward. But what could he say? The truth had come out, but not in the way any of them had planned. Not in a way that would heal. Damon turned slightly, meeting Eli's eyes for just a moment. In that look was all the weight of their shared knowledge, their hopes for redemption, now lying shattered on the theater floor. Then his aides hustled him through the door, leaving Eli alone on the stage with the remnants of their failed celebration. The programs lay scattered across the floor, Maya's name printed clearly at the top of each one. Some had been trampled in the chaos, leaving footprints across her memory. Eli stood in the harsh stage lights, watching as everything they'd built collapsed in a storm of camera flashes and accusations. Through the theater's windows, he could see the media circus growing. Reporters were setting up their equipment, their faces eager for the scandal. Damon was being rushed to a waiting car, his head down, surrounded by his protective circle of suits and security. The vehicle's tinted windows offered him one last shield from the truth he'd waited too long to tell. As the black car pulled away from the curb, Eli felt the weight of failure settle onto his shoulders. The workshop, Maya's legacy, Noah's chance for acceptance, all of it seemed to disappear into the night, along with Damon's retreating taillights. The morning sun cast long shadows through Eli's kitchen window, but he couldn't feel its warmth. His coffee sat untouched, growing cold beside the morning paper. The headline screamed in bold letters, "CEO's Secret Love Child Scandal Rocks Community Dance Program." His phone buzzed again, another message from Claire. He couldn't bring himself to read it. The first few had been enough. Videos of reporters ambushing parents outside the theater, photos of confused children being hurried to cars, social media posts questioning everything about the program. The doorbell rang. Eli's shoulders tensed. Through the peephole he saw Mari, clutching a manila envelope. He opened the door slowly. "You need to see this," she said softly, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced with worry. "It came by courier this morning." Eli's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. The school board letterhead seemed to mock him as he read, "Due to unauthorized use of district facilities and failure to follow proper channels for program implementation, your employment is suspended pending review." The words blurred together. He sank into his recliner, the same chair where he dozed that first night, unaware of how the video was spreading. It felt like a lifetime ago. "They can't do this," Mari insisted, pacing his small living room. "The community supports you. The children need this program. They already did it." Eli's voice was hollow. "Got another letter too. Coal Dynamics Board suspended Damon and froze all matching funds. They've padlocked the basement until further notice." Mari's face fell. "But the children's recital money? Surely that's separate?" "All funds frozen pending investigation." Eli rubbed his temples. "Everything we built, Mari, everything Maya's memory inspired, gone in one news cycle." The morning dragged on. Phone calls went unanswered. Text messages piled up. Around noon, Eli couldn't take the confines of his house anymore. He drove to the church, parking in his usual spot behind the building. The basement doors were wrapped in thick chains, an official notice taped prominently. "Closed by order of the school board." Through the small window, Eli could see the space they'd transformed. Children's artwork still hung on the walls. A forgotten ballet slipper lay in the corner. The wall of names, their memorial to lost loved ones, stood in silent witness to their broken dreams. Eli pressed his forehead against the cool glass. Just yesterday, this space had buzzed with life and hope. Now it felt like a tomb. He remembered Maya practicing her turns in their garage, how she'd bump into the lawnmower and laugh it off. "Dad, you can't expect perfection without a few stumbles," she'd say. The sound of footsteps made him turn. Reverend Hale approached slowly, his face grave. "I saw the news," the Reverend said quietly. "Did you know?" Eli asked, not turning from the window. "When you encouraged me to start this, did you know it would end like this? No one could have predicted this, Eli. But God, don't." Eli's voice cracked. "Please, I can't hear about God's plan right now. I trusted that this was His will. Opening my heart again, helping these kids find joy, like Maya had." He gestured at the locked doors. "Look what happened." The Reverend stayed silent, letting Eli's pain fill the space between them. "You know what hurts the most?" Eli continued, finally turning to face his old friend. "It's not losing my job. It's not even the program closing. It's that those kids, Noah especially, they trusted us. They believed in something beautiful, and now they're learning the same lesson Maya's death taught me. Nothing good lasts." "That's not the lesson," Reverend Hale said gently, but Eli was already walking away, his steps heavy on the concrete. He drove home in a daze, barely registering the reporters still camped outside his house. He slipped in through the back door, avoiding their questions. Inside, the silence was deafening. Maya's photos watched from the walls as he moved through the house like a ghost. In her room, untouched since her passing, her ballet shoes still hung on the bedpost. The ribbon, the one she'd worn in her last recital, the one he'd held that night the video went viral, lay on her dresser. Eli picked it up, the silk smooth against his calloused hands. His knees gave out and he sank to the carpet. The tears he'd been holding back all day finally broke free. "I thought I understood," he whispered, his words choked. "I thought this was your way of making something beautiful from our pain." Maya's spirit touching others, bringing hope. He clutched the ribbon to his chest, rocking slightly. "Lord, I thought you wanted this. I thought." His voice failed him. The afternoon light slanted through Maya's window, casting long shadows across the floor. Eli remained there, on his knees, the ribbon pressed to his heart, surrounded by the remnants of two dreams now broken, his daughter's and the one he'd dared to build in her memory. The only sound was his quiet weeping and the distant clicks of cameras outside, documenting the fall of something that had, for one brief moment, promised to transform grief into grace. The clock on Mari's kitchen wall ticked past midnight, its steady rhythm marking time in a world that felt anything but steady. Steam rose from 2 mugs of chamomile tea, curling in the dim light of her small kitchen. Eli sat slumped at the worn oak table, his weathered hands wrapped around the warm ceramic, but his eyes were distant. "I should have known better," he muttered, shaking his head. "All those children, their hopes, Maya's memory, I've let them all down." Mari leaned forward, her silver hair catching the soft glow of the overhead light. "Eli Brooks, don't you dare carry blame that isn't yours to bear." She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "The workshop brought joy to those children. Nothing can take that away. But now it's gone, padlocked, like it never existed." His voice cracked. "The school board said I demonstrated poor judgment, called it a liability issue." He pulled out the formal letter from his pocket, crumpled from being read too many times. "Remember what you told that little Martinez boy last week?" Mari's eyes sparkled. "When he kept falling during the spin step?" "Get back up," Eli whispered. "That's right. Get back up." Mari squeezed his hand. "The opposite of shame isn't pride, Eli, it's service. Those children need you to keep standing." Across town, in the darkened sanctuary of New Hope Community Church, Damon Cole sat alone in the third pew. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie loose around his neck. The only light came from the eternal flame near the altar and the street lamps filtering through the stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscope shadows on the floor. In his hands, He held the small note Reverend Hale had left him. "Confession is how we put the heavy box down." The paper was soft now from being folded and unfolded countless times throughout the night. The weight of years pressed down on him. Years of building walls, maintaining appearances, choosing safety over truth. He thought of Noah's face at the recital, bright with hope before everything shattered. He thought of Lila's dignity in the face of humiliation, and how she'd protected their son all these years while he hid behind his position. "I don't know how to fix this," he whispered into the empty church. The silence seemed to answer with memories. Maya's grave, where he'd first broken down. Eli mopping floors while comforting children. The workshop filled with laughter. Simple moments of grace he'd witnessed, but never quite understood. In Mari's kitchen, Eli pushed back from the table. "I keep thinking about Maya," he said softly. "How she used to say that dancing was like praying with your whole body." Mari smiled, her eyes misting. That girl had wisdom beyond her years. She would have loved seeing those kids dance. Eli's voice strengthened slightly. "Even Noah, you should have seen him, Mari. That boy has real talent." "And a father who needs to learn what you already know," Mari said gently. "That love is stronger than fear." Back in the sanctuary, Damon stood and walked slowly to the altar. The eternal flame flickered, sending shadows dancing across the cross. He thought of his own father, how he'd built cold dynamics from nothing, teaching Damon that image was everything and vulnerability was weakness. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered, "but I can't live that way anymore." The first hints of dawn began to color the eastern windows. Purple and gold light spilled across the altar, reaching toward where Damon stood. He looked down at Reverend Hale's note one more time, then carefully folded it and placed it in his pocket. In Mari's kitchen, the same dawn light was beginning to soften the shadows. Eli stared into his empty mug, then looked up at his friend. "Maya used to say something else too." Mari waited, patient and steady. She'd say, "Daddy, sometimes you have to dance even when you're scared." A tear rolled down his cheek, but his voice was firm. "I taught her that. Maybe it's time I remembered it myself." The morning light grew stronger, filtering through the church's stained glass windows in brilliant patterns. Damon watched as the colors painted the altar in warmth. His phone buzzed again, probably his PR team with another crisis strategy. He didn't check it. Instead, he thought of Noah's whispered words at the cemetery. "Mommy says you're my daddy." He thought of Eli's quiet strength, of Lila's grace, of all the chances he'd had to choose truth over appearance. The dawn light filled the sanctuary now, and with it came clarity. Damon stood straighter, his decision made. The heavy box he'd carried for so long, the weight of secrets, shame, and fear, it was time to put it down. The courthouse steps blazed under the midday sun, the marble reflecting light like judgment from above. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like metal flowers. Reporters clustered at the base of the steps, their microphones ready. Cameras focused on the podium that stood empty at the top. Damon Cole emerged from the courthouse doors, his usual crisp appearance replaced by something more human. His tie hung slightly loose, and shadows lingered under his eyes. He carried no notes, no prepared statement, just the weight of truth on his shoulders. Behind him, Lila Santos walked with quiet dignity, her head held high despite the whispers that rippled through the crowd. She wore a simple blue dress, practical and clean, the clothes of a working mother, not a scandal centerpiece. The microphones picked up the sharp intake of Damon's breath as he gripped the podium. Camera shutters clicked like falling rain. "My name is Damon Cole," he began, his voice rough but clear, "and I've spent years building walls to protect a legacy that meant nothing without truth at its foundation." He paused, swallowing hard. 13 years ago, I made choices that affected lives beyond my own. I had a relationship with Lila Santos, who worked in my home. When she left my employment, I told myself it was better for everyone if we went our separate ways. Murmurs swept through the crowd. Damon's knuckles whitened on the podium. "I was wrong. The truth is, I have a son. His name is Noah Santos. He is 13 years old, and he has his mother's courage and grace." Damon's voice cracked. I've missed 13 years of his life because I was too proud, too afraid of scandal, to acknowledge him. To acknowledge the power imbalance between myself and his mother. To face my own failures, as a man and as a father. Lila stepped forward, standing not behind Damon but beside him. Her presence seemed to steady him. Today, I'm resigning as CEO of Coal Dynamics, Damon continued. Gasps rippled through the reporters. But more importantly, I'm establishing a trust for service workers' families, starting with a personal contribution of $50 million. He turned to Lila, who stepped to the microphone. Her voice, clear and strong, carried across the courthouse steps. The trust will be governed by a board of workers and clergy, she stated firmly, not corporate PR teams, not executives, the people who know what these families need, because they live it every day. Damon nodded, accepting her terms without hesitation. I'll serve as chair of community partnerships without salary for the first year. He faced the cameras directly now. To Noah, I can't get back the years I lost, but I'm here now, son, if you'll have me. To Lila, I apologize for every moment you carried this burden alone. Your strength shames me, and your dignity humbles me. Questions erupted from the press corps. Mr. Cole, what about shareholders? Miss Santos, were you paid to keep quiet? What about the stock price? Lila raised her hand, silencing them with unexpected authority. This isn't about money, she said clearly. This is about a boy who deserves to know his father. About other children who deserve chances their parents couldn't give them. About doing what's right, no matter the cost. Damon stepped back to the microphone one last time, his facade finally cracking. Tears tracked down his cheeks as he spoke. I've spent my life building things, companies, portfolios, reputations, but I forgot to build what matters most. Relationships, trust, family. Today, I start over. Today, I choose truth. The cameras captured every moment. A powerful man stripped of pretense, a mother standing in her own power, and between them, the space where healing might grow. As they turned to leave, reporters shouting questions behind them, Lila's hand found Damon's arm. Not in forgiveness, not yet, but in recognition of the first true step he'd taken in 13 years. The courthouse doors closed behind them, leaving the media frenzy on the steps. Inside, in the quiet marble hallway, Damon slumped against the wall, exhausted but lighter. Lila stood nearby, her posture still straight, her eyes fixed on the future she'd just helped shape. Thank you, Damon whispered. Lila's response was simple. It's a start. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Eli Brooks methodically emptied his janitor's closet at Lincoln Elementary. His movements were slow but purposeful as he placed each brush, mop, and cleaning solution into a cardboard box. The termination notice lay crumpled in his pocket, the paper's edges worn from the many times he'd pulled it out to read it again, hoping the words might somehow change. His keys jingled softly as he unlocked the bottom drawer of his metal cabinet. Inside lay Maya's pink hair ribbon, which he'd kept there since returning to work after her passing. Some days, just knowing it was near, had given him strength to keep going. He held it gently, running the silk between his fingers. You're not really leaving, are you? Claire's voice startled him. She stood in the doorway, her eyes red, rimmed. Eli managed a small smile. Don't have much choice, Miss Claire. This isn't right, she said, stepping into the small closet. The kids need you. The workshop needs you. Maybe, Eli said, carefully placing the ribbon in his shirt pocket. But seems like doors keep closing on us lately. Mari appeared behind Claire, carrying a casserole dish. Then we make our own doors, hermano. Eli looked at these two women who'd become his family over the past weeks, Claire with her young idealism, Mari with her unflagging faith. Something stirred in his heart. A familiar whisper he recognized from the day Maya had first asked him to dance with her. You know, he said slowly, Maya always loved dancing outside best. Said the walls made the music feel trapped. Mari's eyes brightened with understanding. The cemetery? Eli nodded, straightening his shoulders. If they close the doors on us, we'll dance in the open air, right there where it all started, at Maya's grave. But the school board, Claire began. Can't stop us from gathering in a public cemetery, Eli finished. No programs to approve, no facilities to misuse. Just people coming together to remember what matters. Mari set down her casserole dish and pulled out her phone. "I'll call Reverend Hale, he'll spread the word, and I'll text all the parents," Claire added, already typing. "When?" "Tomorrow at sunset," Eli said, his voice growing stronger. "Seems right to dance when day meets night, that in-between time when heaven feels closer." The three worked quickly, sending messages and making calls. Claire created a simple online event page, while Mari coordinated with church members to bring candles. Word spread through the town's network of parents, teachers, and dance students. As Eli packed the last of his supplies, a small figure appeared in the doorway. It was Noah, clutching his dance shoes. "Mr. Brooks?" His voice was quiet but steady. "Is it true we're going to dance at the cemetery?" Eli knelt down to meet the boy's eyes. "That's right, Noah. Would you like to come?" Noah nodded solemnly. "Maya's grave is next to my grandma's. Sometimes when I visit, I practice my steps there. I think she watches me too." Eli's throat tightened. He placed a gentle hand on Noah's shoulder. "I believe she does, son. I believe they both do." Throughout the evening, responses flooded in. Parents offered to bring blankets and flashlights. The local hardware store promised battery-operated lanterns. Someone suggested stringing battery-powered fairy lights in the old oak trees near Maya's plot. Eli sat in his empty kitchen that night, surrounded by boxes from his closet. The termination notice lay on the table before him, but it no longer held the same power. He picked up his phone and began to type a message to send to everyone who'd expressed interest. "Tomorrow we dance under God's own roof. Bring your hearts, your candles, and your hope. No tickets needed, no doors to unlock. Just grace moving in the open air." Mari called around 9, her voice excited. "You should see my living room, Eli. It's full of candles. The ladies' auxiliary raided every store in town." "How many people are we expecting?" he asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. "Hard to say. The online event page has over 200 responses, and that's not counting word of mouth." Eli glanced at Maya's ribbon, now draped over his bedside lamp. "What if the school board tries to stop it?" "Let them try," Mari said firmly. "Some things are bigger than rules and boards and proper channels. Sometimes the Spirit moves where it will, and all we can do is follow." After hanging up, Eli walked out onto his small porch. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like divine choreography. A warm breeze carried the scent of late summer flowers, and somewhere in the distance, a mockingbird sang its evening song. He closed his eyes and could almost see it, candles flickering in the twilight, children twirling between the gravestones, their movements full of life against the backdrop of marble monuments. Not a celebration of death, but a testament to love's persistence. His phone buzzed with another message from Claire. "Just heard from the music store. They're lending us portable speakers. And guess what? The choir from First Baptist wants to come sing backup." The pieces were falling into place, but not in any way Eli could have planned. It was organic, community-driven. Hearts responding to hearts. Maybe that's what Maya had been trying to teach him all along. That sometimes the most powerful dance moves were the ones that came straight from the soul, unplanned and uncontained. As the night deepened, more messages arrived. People offering chairs for the elderly, bottles of water, bug spray. Someone suggested carpooling to help with parking. Each ping of his phone represented another thread in this tapestry of community support. Eli found himself returning to his closet one last time, where he picked up the old boombox he'd used to play Maya's practice music. The batteries still worked, and when he pressed play, the familiar notes of "Nearer My God to Thee" filled the small space. He let the hymn wash over him, remembering how it had sounded on that first morning at the grave, sung by children's voices. Tomorrow they would dance again, not in defiance, but in devotion, not in protest, but in praise. Every step would be a prayer, every turn a testimony. The final message of the night came from Reverend Hale. "Brought extra candles to the church office. Come early to help set up. Remember, Eli, light shines brightest in the dark places." Eli placed the boombox beside his packed boxes and got ready for bed. Through his window, The stars continued their own eternal dance, and somewhere between earth and heaven he felt Maya smiling. The setting sun painted Oak Hill Cemetery in shades of amber and gold. Hundreds of candles flickered to life one by one, creating a river of light that flowed up the gentle slope toward Maya's grave. The autumn air held just enough chill to make everyone huddle closer, sharing warmth and whispered words of encouragement. Eli Brooks stood at the center of it all, his weathered hands steady as he held his own candle. He wore his Sunday best, a simple navy suit that had seen better days but carried dignity in every pressed line. Around him, familiar faces emerged from the growing darkness. Claire with her third-grade students, Mary leading the church choir members, and dozens of parents who'd supported the workshop from the start. "Thank you all for coming," Eli said, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "Sometimes when doors close, God opens the sky instead." The children from the workshop gathered near him, their dance shoes peeking out from under warm coats. They formed a circle, just as they had that first morning when everything began. A small girl, Sophie, from Claire's class, stepped forward with her violin. The first notes, "Of Nearer My God to Thee," floated through the evening air, pure and clear. The circle began to move. Small feet traced patterns in the grass, arms raised with grace that defied their young ages. These were the steps Maya had loved, the ones she'd practiced in their living room until the floorboards creaked in protest. Now they were danced by a dozen children who'd never met her but carried her spirit in every movement. From the edge of the crowd, Noah Santos watched with longing. He stood close to his mother Lila, who squeezed his shoulder gently. "Go on," she whispered. "That circle has room for you too." Noah hesitated, then felt a larger hand rest on his other shoulder. Damon Cole stood there, his usual polished appearance softened by the candlelight. Gone was the crisp business suit, replaced by a simple sweater that made him look more like a father than a CEO. His eyes held the same question as Noah's. Did they deserve to join this moment of grace? Eli saw them standing there and nodded, a simple gesture that carried the weight of forgiveness. The circle parted, making space, and Noah stepped forward first. His movements were hesitant at first, then found their rhythm as muscle memory took over. The other children smiled, welcoming him back into their dance. Damon watched his son move with such natural talent, such pure joy, and something broke open in his chest. Without conscious thought, he found himself stepping into the circle too. He didn't know the steps, had never danced like this in his life. But the children guided him with gentle hands and encouraging smiles. The hymn swelled as Mari's voice joined Sophie's violin. Other voices followed, creating a harmony that seemed to rise straight to the stars now appearing in the darkening sky. The candlelight caught tears on many faces, but they were tears of healing rather than grief. Parents joined their children in the dance. Teacher danced with student, banker with clerk, breaking down the artificial barriers that had divided their town. Even those who claimed they couldn't dance found themselves swaying to the music, caught up in something larger than themselves. Through it all, Eli watched from beside Maya's grave. His daughter's headstone gleamed in the candlelight, the fresh wildflowers at its base nodding in the evening breeze. The pink ribbon he'd tied there that morning fluttered like a living thing. "Let us pray," Eli said as the music gentled. The dancing slowed but didn't stop completely, becoming a soft walking meditation. His voice carried clear and strong across the hilltop. "Lord, we thank you for the gift of movement, for the joy of dance, for the way you turn our mourning into celebration. We thank you for Maya, whose love continues to bring people together. We thank you for second chances and open hearts." The wind picked up slightly, catching Maya's ribbon and making it dance on its own, while hundreds of candle flames flickered but held strong. All around the circle, people bowed their heads but kept moving, as if they couldn't quite bear to be still. Noah danced between his mother and father now, their hands linked in a chain of reconciliation. Somewhere in the back, a school board member wiped tears from her eyes. Eli's prayer continued, his words carried on the same breeze that played with Maya's ribbon. "Thank you for showing us that when we think all hope is lost, you have simply moved it outdoors. Thank you for teaching us that grace doesn't need a building. It just needs willing hearts. The violin's notes soared one final time, and the dancers raised their candles toward the deepening purple sky. Hundreds of lights swayed together, a constellation of hope brought down to earth, while Maya's ribbon danced above them all. The morning sun streamed through Eli's kitchen window, casting warm light across yesterday's coffee cup still sitting on the counter. He hadn't slept much after the candlelit gathering, his mind too full of images. Hundreds of flames dancing in the darkness, Noah and Damon stepping into the circle together, Maya's ribbon catching the last rays of sunset. His phone buzzed. Mari had texted him a link to the local news website. With trembling fingers, he tapped it open. There, splashed across the screen in bold letters, "Candlelit Dance Heals Community. Hundreds gather at Oak Hill Cemetery." Below the headline was a stunning photograph, the hillside glowing with candlelight, faces illuminated in the warm glow, children dancing with abandon. The article spoke of reconciliation, of truth's power to heal, of a father and son finding each other in a circle of grace. Eli's doorbell rang. It was Claire, clutching the morning paper. Her eyes were bright with excitement. "Have you seen it?" she asked, spreading the newspaper on his kitchen table. "It's everywhere. Local TV, social media. Even the national news picked it up." More stories filled the pages, interviews with townspeople who'd attended, quotes from Reverend Hale about the transformative power of honesty, and a statement from Coal Dynamics' new board announcing their decision. "They're reinstating the donation," Claire said, pointing to the article. "Not just matching it, they're quadrupling it. And look, they've appointed an independent oversight committee. Lila's going to be on it." Eli sank into his chair, overwhelmed. The paper trembled in his hands as he read further. The new trust would support arts education for underserved communities across the region. They were calling it the Maya Noah Arts Fellowship. His phone rang again, the school district's number. Eli answered, his throat tight. "Mr. Brooks?" It was the superintendent's voice. "We've called an emergency meeting of the school board this morning. The community response has been, well, overwhelming. We've received hundreds of letters and calls." Eli listened, barely breathing, as she continued. "The board has voted unanimously to rescind your suspension, effective immediately. We owe you an apology, Mr. Brooks. What you've created here, it's exactly what our community needed." Mari burst through his back door without knocking, waving her phone. "Eli, mira esto!" She stopped short when she saw him on the call, covering her mouth apologetically. The superintendent was still speaking. "We'll be sending your official reinstatement letter this morning. And Mr. Brooks, we'd like to discuss expanding the workshop program. Perhaps making it a permanent part of our curriculum." Eli managed to thank her, his voice rough with emotion. As he set the phone down, Mari wrapped him in a fierce hug. "God is good," she whispered. "He makes beauty from ashes." Claire was reading more headlines from her phone. "Listen to this. CEO's confession leads to groundbreaking worker trust." And here's another. "Community dance program bridges divides." Oh, and the mayor's office is declaring next week Community Arts Week. A knock at the front door made them all turn. A courier stood there with an official envelope from the school district. Eli's hands shook as he signed for it. The reinstatement letter was formal, typed on heavy letterhead, but the handwritten notepaper clipped to it caught his eye first. It was from the board member who had dismissed him as just a janitor. "Mr. Brooks," it read, "I was wrong. Please forgive me. Your dignity and grace have taught us all what true leadership looks like." Eli sat at his kitchen table, the letter trembling in his hands, as morning light spilled across the pages. Mari squeezed his shoulder. Claire wiped tears from her cheeks. And there, on his refrigerator, Maya's ribbon caught the sun, dancing in the gentle breeze from the open window. His own words from last night's prayer echoed in his mind. "Lord, you don't waste anything, not our pain, not our tears, not even our mistakes. You make all things new." The morning paper rustled softly. Headlines of hope spread across his table like a feast of redemption. The reinstatement letter in his trembling hands felt like more than just a piece of paper, that it was tangible proof that light could pierce any darkness, that truth could heal any wound, that love could bridge any divide. Outside his window, children were already gathering on the sidewalk, some wearing dance shoes, others clutching sheets of music. They were waiting for the basement doors to open again, waiting for the music to begin, waiting for another chance to move in the light of grace that had transformed their town. The musty church basement air had never felt so sweet. Eli stood at the bottom of the stairs, watching kids rush past him with excited chatter, their dance shoes clicking against the freshly waxed floor. The space looked different now, brighter somehow, despite being the same old basement. New mirrors lined one wall, donated by the local glass shop, and colorful banners hung from the exposed pipes overhead. "Mr. Brooks, Mr. Brooks," a young girl tugged at his sleeve. "Where do we put our bags now?" "Right over there, Sarah." He pointed to the new cubbies along the far wall. "Look for your name tag." The cubbies had been Lila's idea. She had insisted every child needed their own space, something that belonged just to them. Now, as the new director of family services for the Coal Dynamics Workers Trust, she brought that same attention to detail to everything she touched. Mari bustled past with an armload of registration forms. "Eli, we've got 15 new students signing up today alone. The scholarship fund is working exactly like we hoped." The Maya Noah Arts Fellowship had been structured differently from the start. No child would be turned away for lack of funds. The trust covered tuition, dance shoes, even transportation for families who needed it. What had begun as a simple workshop had grown into something far more profound. "Has anyone seen my ballet slippers?" Noah's voice carried from the doorway. He stood there with Damon, both of them looking somewhat uncertain, despite having been here countless times before. "Check the lost and found," Eli called out. "Claire reorganized it yesterday." Watching Damon now, in his plain work clothes instead of his usual suits, Eli could hardly believe this was the same man who had once ruled Coal Dynamics from the top floor of a glass tower. These days, Damon volunteered 3 afternoons a week, helping with everything from paperwork to mopping floors. The humility in his bearing wasn't an act, it was earned, step by careful step. "The registration table needs help," Lila announced, emerging from her small office. She wore a simple blazer now, her new position reflected in her confident stride. "Damon, would you mind?" "Of course." Damon nodded, moving to assist the growing line of parents. The way he and Lila worked together now, with professional respect and careful boundaries, had become its own kind of grace. Children continued streaming in, their voices echoing off the basement walls. Some headed straight for the practice room, others gathered in small clusters, showing off new dance moves. A few of the older students had started teaching the younger ones, creating a beautiful chain of shared knowledge. Claire appeared at Eli's side, holding a familiar purple ribbon. "I thought you might want this for the wall," she said softly. Eli took Maya's ribbon, running the silk through his fingers. The fellowship's memory wall had become a living testament to both loss and hope. Photos, drawings, and mementos covered its surface, each telling its own story of transformation. Noah approached, clutching a rolled-up piece of paper. "Mr. Brooks, I finished my drawing. Do you think? Could it go up there too?" "Of course it can." Eli helped Noah unroll the artwork, a beautiful sketch of dancers in motion, their forms suggesting both strength and vulnerability. Together, they found a space on the wall. Eli carefully pinned Maya's ribbon beside Noah's drawing, the old and new side by side. The purple silk caught the light, seeming to dance even in stillness. "She would have loved this place," Noah said quietly. "Yes," Eli agreed, his throat tight with emotion. "She would have." The basement hummed with life around them, Mari leading warm-ups, Claire organizing the music, Lila conferring with parents, Damon helping a small boy tie his shoes. All these threads of community, woven together into something stronger than any one person could create alone. Eli stepped back, taking in the scene. The fellowship wall told their story now, Maya's ribbon and Noah's art marking the journey from loss to healing, from secrets to truth, from solitary grief to shared joy. "Time for class," Claire called out, clapping her hands. Children scrambled to their places as the first notes of music filled the air. The church basement hummed with life as families gathered for the Maya Noah Arts Fellowship celebration. Folding tables lined the walls, laden with potluck dishes, Mari's empanadas, Claire's chocolate chip cookies, and countless casseroles brought by parents. Children darted between adults, their fancy clothes slightly rumpled from an evening of play and dance. Eli stood near the refreshment table, taking in the scene. The space had been transformed in just a few weeks. New mirrors lined the walls, donated by the local glass shop. Colorful banners hung from the exposed pipes, and children's artwork decorated every available surface. But what touched him most was the wall of names. A memorial, not just to Maya now, but to all the loved ones the community had lost. Their memories lived on in the joy of dancing feet. The sound system played soft jazz, and the scent of coffee mingled with the sweet aroma of baked goods. Parents chatted in small groups while their children practiced dance moves in front of the mirrors. Noah, wearing a crisp, button-down shirt, demonstrated a perfect pirouette for two younger students. Lila watched her son from across the room, beaming with pride. She looked different now, more confident in her new role as Director of Family Services for the Trust. The scandal that had threatened to shame her had instead become a platform for change. Mari approached Eli with a fresh cup of coffee. "Would you look at that?" she said, nodding toward Noah. "That boy's got natural talent." "Maya would have loved teaching him," Eli replied softly, accepting the coffee. "She is teaching him." Mari squeezed his arm. "Through you." Damon entered quietly through the side door, dressed casually in slacks and a sweater, a far cry from his former CEO suits. He'd been helping set up chairs at the community center all afternoon, part of his volunteer work. The past weeks had changed him too. The sharp edges of corporate power had softened into something more human. He made his way through the crowd, stopping to chat with parents who now treated him not as a powerful CEO, but simply as Noah's dad. When he reached Eli, he carried 2 plates of food. "Thought you might be hungry," Damon offered one to Eli. "I noticed you've been too busy hosting to eat." "Thank you." Eli accepted the plate, touched by the thoughtfulness. They found a quiet corner near the wall of names, where Maya's ribbon fluttered next to Noah's first drawing. For a while, they ate in comfortable silence, watching the celebration unfold. Claire led a group of younger children in a simple dance game. Noah helped a smaller boy with his steps, showing the same patience Maya had always shown with beginners. "I never thought I'd find peace in a church basement," Damon finally said, his voice low. "But here we are." Eli nodded, understanding the weight of those words. "Grace shows up in unexpected places." "I owe you an apology," Damon continued, "and my gratitude. When you told me I needed to walk into the light," he paused, collecting his thoughts. "I was terrified, but you didn't let me hide. You held me accountable to be the father Noah deserves." "Fathers don't give up," Eli replied simply, touching Maya's ribbon. "They dance, even through tears." Damon's eyes grew moist. "I'm learning that. Every day with Noah, I'm learning that." The music changed to something slower. An old hymn played on piano. Several children recognized it and began to sway. Noah looked up from his conversation, searching the crowd until he spotted Damon. "Dad," he called out, waving excitedly. "Come dance with us." Damon hesitated, but Eli gave him a gentle push. "Go on. Being a father means looking foolish sometimes." "Only if you join me," Damon said, extending his hand. "Show us how it's done." Eli laughed softly, remembering his awkward dance at Maya's grave that had started it all. Together, they stepped onto the floor as children gathered around them, giggling at the sight of 2 grown men attempting to follow the music. Noah grabbed both their hands, forming a circle. Other children joined in, their laughter echoing off the basement walls. The sound was pure joy, the kind that could only come from hearts healing together, one dance step at a time. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of community and the sound of children's laughter, the basement wasn't just a room anymore. It had become sacred space, where grief transformed into grace, where secrets gave way to truth, and where 2 fathers learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply keep dancing. Eli met Damon's eyes across the circle of dancing children, and a look of understanding passed between them. They were both changed men, one who had lost a daughter but found purpose in her memory, and one who had found a son by losing everything else. Together, they had discovered that true redemption often comes through surrender, and that love is stronger than any corporate board or social standing. The children spun faster, their energy infectious. Eli and Damon, still somewhat awkward but no longer caring, let themselves be pulled along in the orbit of innocent joy. Around them, parents clapped in rhythm, Mari's voice lifted in harmony with the piano, and Claire wiped happy tears from her eyes. The night sky stretched like velvet above Oak Hill Cemetery, stars twinkling like scattered diamonds. A gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of late summer flowers across the peaceful grounds. Small clusters of people made their way up the hill in the darkness, their footsteps hushed against the dewy grass. Eli Brooks stood before Maya's headstone, his weathered hands adjusting the fresh wildflowers he'd brought. The marble gleamed softly in the starlight, his daughter's name etched deep and permanent. Behind him, Mari organized a small group of children, whispering instructions with her usual warm patience. "Remember, dears," she murmured. "Soft steps like we practiced. This is a special dance." Damon Cole approached slowly, his hand resting protective on Noah's shoulder. The boy clutched a small bouquet of daisies, Maya's favorite. Lila walked beside them, her face gentle with understanding. The three of them paused a respectful distance from the grave, waiting. Eli turned to face the gathered group, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Maya loved to dance right here," he said softly. "Said the hill made her feel closer to heaven." His voice caught, but he smiled. "Tonight, we dance for her again." Mari began to hum the first notes of "Nearer, My God, to Thee." The children joined in, their young voices blending in sweet harmony. Noah stepped forward first, placing his daisies beside Eli's wildflowers. Then he moved back, taking his place in the forming circle. They began to dance, just as they had that first morning months ago. But this time, there was no awkwardness, no hesitation. Their feet moved in gentle rhythm, bodies swaying like wheat in a summer breeze. The children remembered every step Claire had taught them, their faces serene in the starlight. Damon watched for a moment, his usual corporate polish stripped away. Here, in the quiet dark, he was simply a father, learning to love. He stepped into the circle, joining the dance with humility. Noah's eyes lit up, and he reached for his father's hand. Eli's voice lifted in a quiet prayer as they moved. "Thank you, Lord, for the gift of dance, for the healing in motion, for the grace to keep going when the music seems to stop." Lila joined the circle too, her hand finding Noah's other one. Their shadows merged and separated in the starlight, three hearts finally beating in harmony. The sight made Eli's chest ache with a bittersweet joy. Mari's humming grew stronger, and other voices joined in. The hymn floated up toward the stars, carried on the night wind. Children twirled carefully around the headstones, their movements full of innocent reverence. Damon pulled Noah close, enfolding his son in a proper embrace for the first time. The boy melted into his father's arms, all the months of longing and uncertainty dissolving in that simple touch. Tears slid down Damon's cheeks, but he didn't try to hide them anymore. Eli knelt beside Maya's stone, his fingers tracing the familiar letters. "We kept dancing, baby girl," he whispered, "just like you taught us. Through the hard days and the good ones. Through the tears and the joy." His voice broke. "We kept dancing." The breeze picked up, rustling through the trees. Maya's ribbon, tied forever to her headstone, fluttered like a prayer flag in the night air. The soft purple fabric caught the starlight, dancing its own quiet dance above the gathered family below. The circle moved in perfect unity now, fathers and children, lost and found, all stepping together in the sacred dark. Their shadows painted stories of redemption across the quiet graves, while above them, the stars continued their eternal dance. Mari's voice rose clear and strong in the chorus, the words carrying all their hope. "Nearer, my God, to Thee, nearer to Thee." The children's voices joined her, sweet and pure, while the adults hummed harmony. They danced until the moon rose higher, casting silver light across the peaceful scene. Maya's ribbon continued its gentle dance in the breeze, as if offering a daughter's blessing on the healing happening below. In that moment, under the vast sky, they were no longer CEO or janitor, lost child or grieving father. They were simply people finding their way back to grace, one step at a time, together in the starlight. The night wind carried their music up toward heaven, while Maya's ribbon fluttered like a promise of peace, marking not an ending, but a new and higher beginning. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Eli Brooks, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.